Today, I have a very special guest with me, Carl Pullein. He's a renowned productivity and time management coach who has helped thousands of people and organizations around the world get better at their managing their time and become more productive using technology they carry around with them every day. Carl has written books on productivity and time management and also coaches companies and individuals around the world through his time and life mastery and your digital life courses. I'm absolutely humbled that he's partnering with Nextgen Digital today, and I will be in conversation with him talking about various facets of productivity as well as efficiency. So let's get to our conversation. Welcome, Carl. Thanks for.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Very good indeed. Thank you.
So, Carl, as you and we have spoke earlier also, I've
Mhm.
been following you for the last almost like 2 years, a little more on YouTube. And first of all, thanks for partnering with me as well as with Nextgen Digital.
Mhm.
And this is a very young organization, just 90 days old, with quarter of a million views over here. And I thought a person like you with a rich experience of 3 decades uh, will be great to have you and get your insights and some coaching tips on it.
Mhm.
So, without any further delay, if I may request you, and if you can talk a little bit about yourself, what you have been doing, just for the benefit of our viewers.
Okay, so my background was in, well, actually, I started in hotel management and car sales, but eventually I got serious about my career and I went to law school and studied law. I graduated as a lawyer in the UK. This was in the late 1990s, and I realized very quickly once I started working for a law firm that I had just made probably the biggest mistake of my life so far. Now, it wasn't law that was the problem. I still love law. I love reading the legal reports and so on. It was working in an office. I just couldn't, it just did not suit my character, my personality. I think so. I needed some time out. I needed some time out to think and sort of put myself back on track with a career. So I thought, okay, I'll take some time out. I'll come to Asia. It's a place that I've always wanted to spend some time. So I chose Korea. I came to Korea and started teaching English, and I fell in love with teaching. It was just, I can't understand how I never saw that before, but teaching certainly was the thing that I loved doing. And one of the things and that brought me into time management and productivity was because ever since I was at school, I was fascinated with time management, of managing time. And it was something from, I think it was middle school. I used to write out or draw out these wonderful timetables for studying. And I was terrible at studying, but I was great at making the timetables. And I just loved it. And then for some of your viewers who may remember, I got a Filofax when I was 18. Oh, the Filofaxes. And then I got a Franklin Planner in the early 1990s. And I actually used that right up until 2009 when I switched over to the digital system. And I followed David Allen's Getting Things Done. That was my kind of a first foray into digital systems. And I think some people with GTD, not all, but some people with GTD, they find there's too much organizing and processing, and it certainly was for me. And so round about 2 years ago, I developed my own system, which is called COD, which is
I know.
Collect, Organize, and Do, which is mainly spending 95% of your time doing and just 5% of your time organizing. And last year, I developed a kind of time management system that I call the time sector system, which is based on deciding simply when are you going to do a task. And so throughout those years, I kind of developed blogs. I wrote a blog. I think I started my blog in about 2014. I started my YouTube channel in early 2016, probably January 2016. My podcast started at the end of 2017, and yeah, it keeps me busy.
Very good.
so,
Very good.
so that's kind of like the long history.
No, that's a great introduction.
Mm.
I'm not sure if you mentioned this. Which year did you start your first YouTube video? You remember?
Well, actually, we were talking about before, and Francesco De Lesso, I did a video for him in 2015. I think it was October. And it was because I'd just written a book, Your Digital Life 2.0, and I asked if I could do a guest spot for him, and he said, yeah, sure. So, because I'd been following Francesco for about a year at that stage. And so I did a video for him, and I absolutely loved putting it together. And from October then to January 2016, I started like deciding how I was going to do it, my format. I did a lot of research on the kind of best YouTube videos out there, that even getting to the point of the length, because that's actually very important. If you go too long on YouTube, you can see the numbers will just drop off after about 8 or 10 minutes. So I realized that the golden time is around about between 8 and 10 minutes per video. And then in January, when I came back to Korea, because I spend Christmas with my family over in Ireland. And so when I came back to Korea in January, I said, right, that's it, I'm starting. And I started. And apart from just knowing about the length, I had no idea really how to do a YouTube channel. I just put I propped my phone camera up on a book on a table, and I just sat in front of it with my computer behind me, and there was no microphone. Oh, it was bad.
No, that's the way to go. I also started exactly like that, just putting my phone right in front of me, using the same audio from the phone, and start recording it, right?
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. It's, they call it bootstrapping, and yeah, I bootstrapped it. And it has been, I have to be honest, it's been one of the best journeys of my life.
Yeah. No, I see that. And I'm pretty excited to have you once again. And so let me ask you this. I have been reading quite a bit on your blogs and your podcasts and various different methodologies which you have introduced in this industry. So as you were talking about the GTD methodology, the CORD system, the time sector system, my next question is pretty obvious. Like, how do you typically manage your day? Or what kind of different apps do you use? I know one thing, that you are very much in the Apple or iOS ecosystem. But if you can just take a few minutes and talk a little bit about it, how do you manage your day? What different kind of apps do you use? And maybe you can touch upon a little bit more on the CORD side.
Well, for me, where possible, I have an Apple computer, I have an iPhone and an iPad. So I'm very much in the Apple ecosystem. So for me, where possible, and this is advice I would give to anybody, is stick with the system that your main devices use. If you're trying to use Microsoft with Apple, although it does work and there's no problems, Microsoft has its own kind of philosophy. Apple has its own philosophy. I've never owned a Windows computer. My first computer was, I think, 1997, and it was a Performer 64 Mac. Oh, those were the days. So I've never really understood how Windows work. And so, although I really admire what Microsoft has done in the last 5 or 6 years, I've done tremendous things, particularly with Satya Nadella. He's just been a revelation. And I know that but for me, because of my background in Apple, it just makes sense to stick with Apple because I know their philosophy. I know how it works. But that said, in terms of the tools that I use, because I would consider myself as a real power user, I actually use a third-party app for my to-do list to manage it. I use Todoist. Todoist is it's like the core of my whole system because that's telling me the tasks that I have to do each day. When it comes to note-taking, I have spent 10 years with Evernote. I'm just kind of waiting for Evernote to bring out this long-awaited update that they keep promising. And I know it's coming. I'm in their beta program. It looks very good, but they are taking their time. And I need something that's reliable and strong. So at the moment, I'm pretty much using Apple Notes on my phone and iPad and computer, simply because it's reliable, it's solid, it doesn't let me down. And once Evernote comes out with their update, I will probably shift back to Evernote because, as I say, I've been using Evernote for 10 years. I know it inside out. I know all the keyboard shortcuts. But you said that there about what would you do to, like, one of the core things in my day is to build structure. So I have like two, if you like, stakes in the ground. I have my morning routines, which is 30 minutes when I start the day. And it starts the moment I turn on my kettle. So I turn on the kettle and I have a series of stretches that I do. And then I do about 10 minutes meditation, but it's not traditional meditation. It's more visualization. I like to visualize how the day is going to go, what kind of exercise I'm going to do. And then at the end of the day, I have what I call the golden 10, but it's just basically a 10-15 minute time where I just look at my schedule for tomorrow, look at my to-do list for tomorrow, and decide, what am I going to do? What are my objectives? What are the things that I really must get done? So it's the key really to having a productive day is really having a routine to start the day and a routine to close the day. And if you get that and you turn that into a habit, it's amazing how productive you can become.
That's impressive. That's I'm sure it will be providing a lot of insights to our viewers, and including myself. And so another question what I had, and I've been thinking about it for quite some time, and thought of, hey, I should ask Carl about it. So Carl, I've been reading a lot on this productivity software industry, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. And I read it somewhere that by 2025, this industry is going to be like about $96 billion. I don't know how much it is right now. But talking about this space, and every day, some new software company, or like we are talking about companies like Bear for note-taking or Rome Research and all those things. If you see Francesco's videos, all these things are coming up. Notion is there. So I'm not trying to do any comparison between like Apple Notes or Evernote and all these different applications. But based on the 3 decades of experience you have, what do you think, or where do you think this industry is going towards in future, or where do you see this entire space of productivity software is going to hit in the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months?
I think based on what I'm seeing from my corporate clients, like my company clients, one of the biggest areas that's changing now is collaboration. So I've been talking with a lot of CEOs recently, and what they particularly the CEOs of the small, medium-sized companies, the engine room of economies. I know we all get really excited about the big Microsofts, the Apples, the Googles, but they're not really the engine room. The engine room is those small, medium-sized companies underneath all that don't get spoken about. But the CEOs of those companies that I'm talking to, they're looking at collaboration. They want to see tasks come in. They want to then say, right, you do this, you do that, you do this, and they can just click, 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 click. And then at the end of the day, they can just see a report, if you like, of what's been done. And if you think about what's happened because of COVID-19, we're now in the process of a huge shift towards remote working. People are going to be working more often from home now. I don't think people have really quite grasped the changes that are coming, simply because we've never had anything like that in most of our lifetime. I think the last time we had such disruption was the Second World War, where things dramatically changed overnight, almost in 1939 for most people, particularly in Europe. And from there, we had to change. And just like now, we've had to change. But the beauty of the human species is boy, we can change. We are so fast at change. I know we're all blaming the governments for this, that, and the other, and it seems to be like a hobby of many people is just to blame the government. But
Absolutely.
the reality is these things come along and it causes us to have massive, massive change. But as a human being, we are brilliant at changing. And as I say, what I've noticed in the productivity field now is bosses and companies are suddenly thinking, wait a minute, let's let our team work at home. We just need tools like Slack and Twist, those kind of tools where we can communicate. Either we can jump on a call like we are now, Zoom and Google Hangouts and Microsoft Teams, which is having a fantastic year. That's the area of productivity I see going to be growing very, very fast. Now, the problem that I think companies like Notion or apps like Notion and Rome Research are going to have is that I've had a look at both of those apps. I've played with them, and I tend to think in terms of, well, what's the average user? The average person in the street, are they going to be able to pick up, for example, Rome Research and be able to use it? And the answer is no, they wouldn't know where to start. And I think the same to a large extent is with Notion. There's an element of people out there, what I would describe as power users, people like me, Francesco, people like that. We love this kind of stuff and we'll play with it.
Yeah.
But the reality is 90% of the people out there are not going to be interested in that kind of software. They want something simple. So Microsoft To Do, which is a reasonably good to-do list manager, is the kind of to-do list most people will use. Apple reminders, things that are already built in. The third-party apps that offer these amazing features, and they do. I mean, Notion and Rome Research is fantastic, but it has a very niche audience. And I think those companies will find it difficult to continue growing. They will grow, but growing at the level they've been growing. And because particularly for the newer apps, when the new latest shiniest tool comes along, people move, and they move very fast. So what I've discovered is that really it's like Microsoft Word. Most people complain about Microsoft Word and Excel, but yet it's still the industry standard. It's still the one everyone uses. Google Docs, great. I think they're probably better than the Microsoft Office to an extent, but they're nowhere near touching, Word and Excel.
Yeah.
Because, people are familiar with those apps and they'll stick with them. It's really hard to get the majority to move to a new app. So I think the biggest change is going to be in collaboration.
Yeah, I got it. And you said it so nicely and so right, Carl, that I've used all these apps like off and on, but I'm stuck to, for the last like almost 9 or 10 years, I've been using Evernote. And lately, in the last about a year or so, since the time Apple came up with their upgrade on Apple Notes, I think last release, I've been using that also. And so my take is very simple, and I think you mentioned it somewhere, that the moment I open any application, I should start capturing it instead of setting up that system, which is happening in Rome Research and even Notion. You have to set it up first to start taking notes.
You do.
Yeah. So anyway.
I mean, there are certain people like me, I would do it. I would spend an afternoon setting it up, making it look pretty and getting it working. Sure, that's just the way I am. Yeah. I just know somebody like my wife who is not interested in that sort of thing. She would just download the app, go, and delete it immediately.
Right.
She wouldn't even try. But Apple Notes, no problem. Because it's there and it's simple. Tap, create a note. Yeah. That's really where the majority of people are. I'm not saying that Notion are doomed, or they're not doomed, because there is a number of people out there who love that kind of technology. Just the majority are not interested.
Absolutely. So I think one of my last question, or trying to understand from you, is it is kind of two questions within one. One is, when you go out and meet these executives in the organization or even individuals, what kind of challenges do you hear from them? regarding productivity or procrastination or making a stress-free life. And what are the top two or three advice do you normally give it to them?
Well, the smartest CEOs that I meet are ones that actually schedule what I call me time. Now, this can be easy if you're kind of an employee because you kind of got fixed hours. And so it's a little bit easier to schedule me time. It's a lot harder if you're an entrepreneur or you run your own business, particularly if you are, there's the two types of business operate. There's an operator and owner. The goal is to become the owner because the owner employs people to do the work that you don't like doing. So you can focus on the work you enjoy doing. The business operator is trying to do everything. And, eventually you just get burnt out. So the smart CEOs and the smart executives that I work with, those guys know they make sure they get their me time pretty much every day. And even if it's just 30 minutes or an hour, but they get, if you like, alone time with their thoughts, a walk in nature, to do exercise. And that's another thing I've noticed with like the really productive people, they make sure they do exercise every day. And it can be just walking in the park, or it could be running. Jack Dorsey, the Twitter CEO, runs every morning. Satya Nadella, as I mentioned, runs every morning. Tim Cook is in the gym at 6:30 in the morning. He wakes up at 3:30, but he's in the gym at 6:30. These guys must know something. And something I learned from Tony Robbins, which is, you can do it yourself and you can learn the hard way, and it'll take you a decade to learn the same kind of thing. Or you can find somebody who's doing what you want to do, really research them and model their behavior.
Sure.
So, if you want to look like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, then get up at 3:30 and get in the gym, because that's what he does 6 days a week. Yeah. Now, if that's what you really, really want to do, that's what it takes. You can model it. Those guys have done the hard work for you. You now just have to figure out what they did and copy them. So when I look at like productivity systems, it's kind of like this, like the second part of your question. If you look at people like Warren Buffett, Sir Richard Branson, Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook, they just use a pen and piece of paper. Richard Branson is famous for his notebooks. I think Warren Buffett, there's an interview where it's this little tiny diary that he keeps in his pocket. He keeps all his notes in there. And these guys, they're earning a serious amount of money every year. So I would say they're pretty successful. And like I mentioned Jack Dorsey before, I mean, his to-do list manager is Apple Notes. Everything goes into Apple Notes, his to-do lists, his notes, his ideas, everything. And when you think about it, there's a common theme here. It's simplicity.
Yes.
Nothing complex, no like really complex project structures and stuff like that. And, I get people say, yeah, but they've got personal assistants. Sure. But the question I would ask, why do they have personal assistants? Because they put themselves in a position to be able to earn enough money to have personal assistants. Mm-hmm. They've kept they've kept the productivity simple. They've focused on what makes them successful. And as soon as they can, they delegate the stuff that doesn't make them successful. And that really is the secret, if you like, to greater productivity, is figure out what is the work that you do that really makes you successful. Yeah. That's the stuff that you want to be spending your time in. The stuff, the low value stuff, like taking the garbage out, updating your numbers in a spreadsheet or whatever, that's low value stuff. It doesn't earn you money. And it's not necessarily going to make you successful. So figure out what it is that makes you successful, however way you define success, and do more of that. Because that's what the successful people do.
This is excellent, Carl. Awesome inputs over here. So I think this is a time to wrap it up. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention one thing which you are a huge, huge fan of, and that is James Bond.
Oh, indeed, yes. Ever since I was about 11 or 12 years old.
I know. I've been seeing every video, or some of the videos I've seen where when you are doing your screencasting, I see all the clothing of James Bond and all that stuff. Yes. But that's amazing. So with that said, Carl, thank you so much.
Oh,
I'm
you're
very
welcome.
thankful, and thanks for partnering with Nextgen Digital. I'm
Hmm.
sure there will be much more to come in future. So
Hmm. I'm
great.
sure. I hope
Have
they
a
will.
healthy
Yes.
life, and thanks.
You too. And thank you very much for having me.
So I hope you like this conversation. Thanks for your time, and do subscribe to our channels if you're new. Also, please do provide your feedback in the comments section on your thoughts on this interview. It will be really helpful for me. I will see you next Thursday on my next production. Until then, have a safe and productive week.